Pod and Cast, brought to you by the Arc of E Network and the Arc of E Podcast. My name is Noah, and I'm here with my official co-host now. Feels good to be able to say that. Mr. Mikey Chappell, back with me once again.
Sweet, made the cut.
Yes, that was the audition last time, and cool. Great response from our fan base. They were like, bring him back. We did, so I just found out, side note, like for the longest time, Apple Podcast had like no analytics whatsoever. You had to get them through a third party. And then the third party that I was using, which I'm sure a lot of people who podcast will be familiar with, which is FeedBurner, they like completely converted all of their stuff and simplified it because there were so many people using it that they basically gutted all of their analytics. So I was like, how do I know how anything is doing? Like what's going on? And that led me down the rabbit hole. But now Apple has like super in-depth, like crazy, like granular detail notes on the pod. So it was nice to see that people still, even after all these years, it is the preferred way to listen to podcasts, still over Spotify.
Yeah.
We are way bigger on Apple Podcasts. So.
I'm not gonna lie, I avoid podcasts on Spotify just because I don't want to warp my year-end stats.
Absolutely. Dude, I consider it so much where I'm just like, one of these is going to show up on your year-end list, so be selective. And they have baited me in because like I was a Ringer fan before they moved over there, and so they still have a lot of stuff on Stitcher, which is my preferred podcast app, but they have a lot of exclusives now that you have to go over to Spotify for. So they got me roped in that way. And then like some of the Spotify originals, like Dissect, pretty incredible music podcast. They did an entire season recently breaking down Bo Burnham's Inside, which I'm sure you would enjoy.
Yeah, I could. I got PowerPoints for that.
Oh, dude,
if you want to get into
this
it.
guy, Cole Kushner, goes super in depth. Like I thought I loved it. I thought I appreciated it. He added so many layers.
You're just amateur hour at this point.
Dude, okay, side note, we will talk about Primal, I promise people. Did you watch the outtakes?
Yes.
The inside outtakes?
I did.
Dude, the fact that was basically like part 2, like it was just as well produced, just as compelling. Like
I hate that his B-roll content
is better than most of our creative output in general.
Like how did those not make the cut?
Dude, I don't know. There's some classics in there. Dude, the 5-year relationship one that escalates into a dissertation on feminism with the spider and everything. The fact that didn't make the cut, which I actually saw them point out, they were like, well, if you think about it, so much of Inside is just him being by himself. So to weirdly all of a sudden have a second character even played by him and like a relationship dynamic, almost like it doesn't quite fit. So it makes sense. Anyways.
Yeah, I can see that. Did you know that was recorded in the Nightmare on Elm Street house?
Yes, I found that out in the process of listening to this. I was like, I did not know that's where he lives. That's kind of awesome.
It just kind of like it just rounds everything out.
In the guest house, in the backyard, I guess, the garage sort of. Okay. This has been Inside Corner. We still can't stop talking about it. Dude, speaking of year-end list, that is going to be on my list for sure this year because I have continued to, when they released outtakes, like I went back down the rabbit hole again. So I know it's already crept up in my algorithm and it's going to be 2 years running with that.
I was just like, it became this thing where like, so my top genre last year was comedy. For Spotify, because I'd take my dog on these really long walks and music can only get you so far. Nothing against music. Like if I'm feeling in the mood, I will. But when I'm walking, I like kind of just engaging at the same time. So like I like, stand-up comedy and all that stuff. So like for as much music I listen to, I guess I listen to more comedy than anything else, just by the walking thing, which is why I switched over to like Apple for podcasts. Like I need people to know how cool I am at the end of every
of course. Year. Absolutely.
So,
I always laugh at I have several friends that share one with their spouse, and it's like, those aren't my taste. Those aren't my taste, I swear to God.
So shut up. We know you all love Neon Moon. Exactly. We all love Neon Moon.
Yes. Okay. Finally, let's start the episode, I suppose. Yes. We're talking season 2, episode 3. Episode is entitled Dawn of Man. which I was very excited when I saw that's where we were headed. Very curious. So we pick up right where we left off. Spear and Fang have just had quite the quite the outing in this village. A lot of emotional stakes, and I got to say, this first little chunk is maybe the most concerned I've been thus far. And I love that it wasn't a battle that had my heart racing, but
Yeah.
when it's like, oh shit, maybe they're not gonna come out of this okay. And Spear walks off, waiting to see if Fang's gonna follow. And
Yeah.
that was maybe the most intense stretch of this show thus
Yeah.
far,
That
emotionally
was
speaking. I
that
was
was
like,
just as heart wrenching as the Up opening sequence for me. It
yeah,
was
yeah.
much shorter, but just like I think they played it off with the perfect amount of time because like now we're all just staring. I actually watched it with my partner who had not seen any
Anything
of the episodes. So she's kind of laughing because she just doesn't get it, but then she looks over at me and I'm just like freaking
similar
out.
similar experience. My partner
Yeah.
was watching, and she's seen bits and pieces of it, but she had
Mhm.
not seen the previous episode. So I
Yeah.
literally, she was like, what's going on? I don't get it. Like, why are you huffing and puffing over there?
Mhm.
And I pause, recap all of the previous episode, and I'm like, yeah, so things are tense right now between this caveman and this dinosaur. So excuse
Yep.
me for
I'm
huffing and
invested
puffing.
now.
Yes. So uh eventually she comes back, and again it's like there's comfort there. There is the moment where he like kind of touches her face as if to say like, I know, I feel bad you had to do that. Terrible situation. I'm still here for you, you're still here for me. And I was like, okay, we're good.
Mhm.
Then they find a cave, uh and things get interesting. uh what did you make of the cave paintings and everything that we see in here? And then of course it's followed up by this kind of extended montage where at first I thought he was dreaming.
Mhm.
I didn't know if
Yeah.
this was actually happening. So yeah, walk me through your thoughts on what do you think's going on in that
Yeah.
cave? What are we
So
seeing?
I it was strange because like it harkens back to the first episode where you see that he is also cave painted at one time, but
Right.
the entire show up until season 2 leads you to believe that like he's the only humanoid, like the closest thing
Mm-hmm.
to a Homo sapien we have. He's
Right.
the only one, and then season 2 messes with your perspective on that by having him be rescued by these other guys,
Mm-hmm.
and now you realize that not only is he not the only one, he is the most behind evolution wise.
Yeah.
So I like that it's introducing this idea that like it's not so much isolation anymore, but now coping with the other in that sense. So
Mm-hmm.
there's
That
more elaborate stories. There's more things that people had developed that he hasn't, and I don't know if that's just by virtue of ending up alone and not having a social circle because they kind of got eaten.
mm-hmm.
um, but yeah, I thought it was a really interesting dynamic, and just to see like the vividness of the stories that he was able to put together. Like it wasn't foreign to him, so
Mm-hmm.
he saw what was happening, could understand what these stories are trying to say, and then when he goes outside and visualizes it, that was
Yeah.
really cool. But I think it's going to be interesting to see how he tries to catch up, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Um, one of maybe one of the shots of the series thus far for me, but definitely shot of the episode was that very like what we're used to as a human handprint, and then
Mm-hmm.
his giant,
Giant,
enormous
yeah.
paw
Mm-hmm.
going over top of it. I thought there's a lot just in
Yeah.
that very simple image. Um, but yeah, see, and then I think we also see in there kind of a little bit of what we had already discussed of like this war between the primal world and the more civilized world that
Mm-hmm.
seems like it has taken place at some point, or is kind of in the thrust of being fought or figured out. So him kind of figuring out where he's gonna side on that is very interesting. We
Yeah.
mentioned, so Mira, of course, we see, but there is the dude who's being sacrificed by the witches. in episode 7. And I think I remember at that time, that might have been because we'd only seen like ape men up to that point. And that guy was maybe the closest to humanoid, but he even still felt not as developed as
Spear-ish.
As Spear. So he has the whole visualization and everything, and we build to a moment that I thought was very, very interesting. He's having all this like self introspection, if you will, and like maybe he could be this higher evolved sort of man or whatever.
But at the same time, he's trying to salvage his relationship with a dinosaur.
Right. Well, I thought it was very, very key in that whole montage sequence where he's imagining like the civilization that was here and everything. And he sees them like kind of living in splendor and like not worried about survival on a day-to-day basis. And it seems like, oh, this is an attractive thing. But then he also sees the reality of like, well, guess what happened to those people? They got wiped out. They're not here anymore. Here's the remnants of them. And in that moment is when he kind of snaps to and is like, oh, I almost forgot who I was for a second. Picks up the spear and immediately kills one of those adorable looking little does that was running around earlier. And you're like, oh, the fact that his instinct was like not to kill it initially, like, oh, something's changed here. And then to just like immediately kind of snap back into, oh, but let me not forget who I am. And it seems like, again, he's processing. It's like, how much of that side of myself do I lose? Because ultimately that's the thing that's kept me alive this whole time. That's the thing that's kept me going, is this survival instinct. And can I turn that off?
Yeah, that's a pretty jarring sequence too. I feel like the noise was, I get it, but it's like, it was just one of those things. Like, I think that's why I love the show, because that stuff keeps happening where you're just like, even like it's really good about luring you into this false sense of security and then just reminding you what it's here to do. So it's just like, oh, maybe he's gonna call it. Nope, no, he's not, and it's gonna be brutal and it's gonna be ridiculous. That's my partner had never seen anything before, did not know what to expect.
Oh, so of course, because that's kind of the first taste of violence we get in the episode. Not the last, certainly.
No, but so she was just like, what is this about? I'm like, this, honestly.
I forget if it's later that evening or if it's the same evening that he has the moment with the cave paintings and everything, but he sees an owl, which I love owls. I was just happy to see one in the Primal universe. Thought that was interesting. That was cool. I want to see some more owls. But then we get an intense snarling beast of some sort. And I don't know about you, the first frame of it, I was like, oh dude, wolf. They're in a wolf den. The wolf came home. And I'm like, oh dude, have we seen like a crazy wolf yet? I'm always kind of tracking like what have they not shown us yet that they're gonna build to.
I felt like they had to lean into the mammalian thing a little bit too.
Yes, absolutely. So when it comes, I'm sorry, the kind of 2-stage reveal of like, it's not a wolf, it's a fucking bear. It's a giant bear. And by the way, it's being ridden by a Viking, basically. A badass like Viking warlord with a helmet. And then you realize there's two of them. These are just like guards. These are just like low level dudes is what it seems like. And I'm like, oh shit.
That's the differentiation I would love to have been on the writer's room, where it's like, okay, like how do we elevate the bear Viking sequence? And then one dude that hasn't said anything all season just goes, just do it again.
Right.
And now we have two of them.
What if a second one?
Like it's one of those things that feels like it could have been an afterthought, but it played so well that all right, cool. He's coming back.
The reveal of, oh, they come outside, and dude, I was shocked. Like immediately I was like, oh my god, there's a second one. What are they gonna do? And again, I'm a simple man, okay? I'm a kid at heart. I'm sorry. He takes them down, and then we get just one of thus far the all-time moments of this show. When Spear, let's go with the Spear. Picks up a fucking sword and a sheath, and I'm like, dude, he looks like fucking Conan the Barbarian right now. Like, let's do this. Let's do this. I'm so amped that he has a sword now. They follow one of the dudes because we didn't mention they see the scorpion insignia. They're like, oh shit, Mira, let's follow. I did not expect to get to her this quickly.
Me neither.
Honestly, really surprised.
Yeah.
But also makes sense that like they've been inland for a couple days. They pursued her immediately. I mean, it does it as much as like the internal logic of the show doesn't matter, they do seem to pay quite a bit of attention to it where it's like, yeah, it makes sense that they're like in the same vicinity right now. So they track her back to the village and essentially it's like, I just want to take you. You're my friend. And she's like, no, you got to take all my people, all the slaves. So
I didn't
slaves
bring a
are
boat.
Yes, exactly. So the slaves are all rolling out. And of course, I'm not watching the episode counter. And I'm like, all right, dude, like they're going to get out of here and like, we'll see what happens next time. But I think this might be the first episode that ends kind of in media res, where it's like, they're ramping up to something because I don't think they're going to be able to get out of this village like unscathed.
Yeah.
And we just kind of see this menacing fog and we hear some stuff, but we don't know what's coming. And boom, cut to credits.
Yep.
Yeah, but I think that's the first time we've done that. Everything has been very like stop and start. You've got a kind of closed book on the end of every episode, but still, you know, you pretty much pick up right where you left off. But this seems like it's moving maybe into a more like truly linear form of storytelling where you really do want the emotional context of like what just happened in the previous episode. Because there's lingering emotions now. I feel like more so than the cumulative nature of like, you know, if you watch the show in a binge, it's like, oh, they really got to a place by the end of season one. But this just feels like the stakes just keep getting ratcheted up every episode. So
I think that's just smart writing. Not that I don't love the silent narrative thing, but when you're doing that, I was always curious because I imagine it must be hard to kind of keep that up for multiple seasons. And you do run the risk of like hitting a huge pacing problem. And that like, how much is your audience going to kind of like, how much wiggle room are we going to give you before we like kind of demand more? And they just kind of forewent all that and just rushed straight into this thing where you're still getting, you know, the narrative driven storytelling, but now the story stakes have way upped and much quicker.
Absolutely. I feel like that's honestly, I mean, you can call it a partly motivated by COVID and people like being thrust back into work, that stuff that was put on pause and everything. But I also feel like it's a little bit of a byproduct of just the sheer amount of content out nowadays.
Oh yeah.
But I've noticed that kind of trend with a lot of series. Like I pointed to Barry season 3 over and over again this year. I don't know. Are you a Barry fan?
I'm all caught up.
Okay. You're all caught up. No worries here. Slight spoil, but really not spoilers. I can talk around it for people who haven't seen it, but one of my favorite seasons of television of this already incredible year. And the thing that, yes, the thing that continually blew me away about it was they just kept writing themselves into corners and like refusing to do we're going to kick this can down the road. And like, maybe we'll worry about this like a few episodes from now. It was just like, no, any conflict that you think that in any other show would be strung along and like a will they, won't they element to it. They just pay it off. Just burn the story, go to its logical conclusion, and then figure out another creative way for it afterwards. And I mean, I feel like there's been a lot of shows this year that are just, they're burning. Severance was another one on Apple where I was like, I still feel like there's a lot of mystery to that show, but like every episode is just ratcheting up the tension and like keeping you invested, because I feel like that is the game these days. Like get in, get out, make an impact, and like make sure people are going to show up for your next season whenever it finally drops. But yeah, so it's nice to see Primal is not slowing down. If anything, they are barreling forward with their world building. Again, the narrative just they keep pushing the boundaries of what you can do with animation. I see no world where this doesn't clean up a second year in a row at the Emmys. I think it's kind of the new favored king of the the animation genre at the moment, which is
Yeah.
nice to see.
Yeah, I don't watch that much animation, but I can't imagine like anything else that's on the market right now that's really creating the same kind of buzz.
There is nothing to my mind that is
Yeah.
this adult um
Mm-hmm.
that and unapologetically so, where it's like even something
Yeah.
like Rick and Morty, which has a huge following and
Mm-hmm.
has more adult themes, is kind
Yeah.
of anchored by being a very like trendy show for like young
Yeah.
kids, very much in the South Park vein of our
Yep.
generation. It's the cool edgy show to watch.
Yeah.
um and like early seasons of Big Mouth, the
Mm-hmm.
Netflix series, I was definitely right there, ready to call it like, dude, this is the best animated comedy post
Mm-hmm.
South Park. I thought like first three seasons of that are pretty unimpeachable, like just
Yeah.
incredible writing, great voice acting, wild jokes,
Yep.
a lot of heart. Uh, and so yeah, but I separate Primal out from like almost anything else because there's nothing really approaching it. Now you've got
Yeah.
uh there's a show called Undone on Amazon. I don't know if you have any familiarity with it. Now that is a rotoscope show where they film the
Oh,
actors and then they do
yeah.
the Linklater technique and paint over
Mm.
top of it. Very cool show. Rosa Salazar, who was Alita in
Yeah.
Battle Angel Alita,
Mm.
she's the lead in it. I recommend that one. The only other animated show that I even put in this vein or like echelon, and it's creeping up there. I don't think it's quite Primal level. Did you watch Invincible on Amazon?
I did not.
So it's based on a Robert Kirkman comic, which is pre-Walking Dead, but one of his series that's been it's already over if I remember correctly, but um, fully animated. Uh, Probably the best voice cast that's been assembled for an animated show in a long
Yeah.
time.
Oh,
Stephen
that's
Young's your lead.
yeah,
J.K.
Jay
Simmons is in it.
Simmons. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I've seen the
Um,
trailers, and I think it was on the list of things. But my list of things has grown so large over the years
I could only
that
imagine.
yeah,
Yeah. Uh, it is very much like, animated like a Saturday morning cartoon, but brutal as something like Primal, essentially,
yeah.
and as adult as something like The Boys, for instance. And
Mm-hmm.
it was kind of like when it premiered, it was like a little removed from The Boys, and it was kind of like,
Yeah,
okay, do they need another like edgy superhero show? Do I need another one of these? But I gave it a shot because I had read the first like trade paperback of Invincible, and I was like, I like the setup, interesting concept. The show is pretty incredible, and it particularly the last like two or three episodes send it on a trajectory where I'm like, dude, I cannot wait to see what they do. Now it's on like a 2 year delay just because of the type of animation it is. It just takes that long to produce. So
yeah,
I don't think we get a season two until 2023, but probably a good time to catch up if you want to. And if you're looking for
yeah.
something that'll scratch that level, it's a little more fun than Primal. I'll
Mm-hmm.
say that, just on a like it's got comedic elements to it, but um it's pretty heavy and it is
Yeah.
very brutal show. So
I've heard that at
yes.
least. I was surprised that it ended up on Amazon, just because it's like it feels like very similar shows all happening at the same time.
Yeah, but it worked for him.
Yeah.
I'm definitely excited for season two. So, but yeah, that's really the only other piece of animation that I watch on a regular or that recently that comes to mind. And obviously, I'm still all over South Park and all the stuff they've been doing for Paramount now that they have the whole deal over there. And dude, Beavis and Butthead is coming back.
Yeah, I
Starts
heard
back
that
this
too.
week, actually, on Friday, if I'm not mistaken. And they just had a new
Yep.
movie, which was
Mm-hmm.
pretty fun. I don't know if you checked it out. Beavis and Butthead
That's
do
fun.
the universe. It's a good time.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So yeah, lots of nostalgic animation coming back. Of course, they're bringing back the X-Men, the '90s version,
Yep.
on Disney
Yep.
Plus at some point, like a
Yeah.
new incarnation of that. That'll be interesting.
Everything
Lots,
is cyclical, and I don't think you realize it till you're an adult and you have like actual things to be nostalgic for.
yeah.
And I don't mind it. I really don't, because
Yes,
we all need it at this point.
for sure.
Yeah.
I've had the occasional debate with Gavin over the nature of nostalgia because there is a part of me that's like, if we fall too much into this, dude, it's like where at a certain point I'm like, I don't really care about like seeing something that reminds me of Star Wars, how about I want to see the guy who's going to make the next Star Wars. Like the next thing of that level. And like, are we ever going to get another one of those if we just keep rehashing and like, but dude, you and I are in the sweet spot now because I feel like we're the 80s nostalgia wave has kind of almost completely crested. I would say it started kind of late, like right in the 2010s with Drive, built to a kind of like mountaintop with Stranger Things, and then has slowly been on the landslide down. Synthwave got really big again for a little while. Everybody's kind of burnt out on it now. I still love it. I don't care. I keep making it. Doesn't matter. But yeah, and I feel like now the 90s, like the 90s are coming back in a big bad way, and we're going to be riding that well into 2030, I would assume.
Oh yeah, 100%. And then we get to look forward to all the things that like I still loved. You know, I was born in the 90s, but I wouldn't call myself a 90s kid because even when I started having coherent memories, I was on an Air Force base in Germany, so I kind of missed out on a lot of the cool pop culture stuff that was going on in the late 90s, and like I finally got caught up in the early 2000s, and that's where like
that's your sweet spot.
Yeah, like I remember all that stuff that happened.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely. How are we doing on time over there? I don't even know if I looked at when we clicked on.
I'm not sure. This is my school account, so we should have plenty. I've gone up to 2 hours on this before.
Word. Well, I guess we can pause on animation. We did mention last time, if anybody wants to stick around for this, if not, feel free. We'll be back next week with Primal episode 4. I don't know what it's called. I didn't look ahead. And you can't watch the trailers on HBO Max, only if you're watching on Adult Swim. I'm sure I could go on YouTube and watch the little 15-second preview, but we will be back next Tuesday. But we're going to talk a little bit about one of my favorite shows of the year, and we'll find out how Mikey felt about it. It's called The Bear. It's on FX. You can watch it on Hulu. You have now finished it. I'm very curious to see how you felt.
Oh man, it was brilliant.
Okay.
it's hard to, it's kind of hard to describe. I mean, I know that at this point in the zeitgeist of pop culture, like the chef is the new rock star, at least in the media that I consume. Food culture's been, obviously it's been really big for a long time, but like, you know, came into prominence about when I went to college, where it became, oh yeah, like chef is a cool thing. Right. And then, you know, you have all these young people starting cool restaurants and things like that. And then it gets kind of glamorized in that sense. Like, I don't know if you've ever had, I'm sure you have, a service industry job, front of house, back of house, whatever. And you just remember this time. Yeah.
I've been working in food service for almost a decade at this point.
Oh yeah, so you completely
still doing it. Yes.
Yeah, you totally got it then. Man, we haven't talked in a hot minute, have we? But yeah, like it gets kind of glamorized in this way that I kind of remember, kind of don't. I remember all the good times of, you know, like just the camaraderie of, you know, staff meal and going out and doing all that stuff. But then also just how brutal it could be sometimes and demoralizing. And it's this weird, I think the show just like hit this crazy balance of a realistic portrayal of the things that go on there, and then also injecting the hope that keeps people doing it.
Yes.
It's a personal, Jeremy Allen White kind of crushed it, but I also haven't really seen him in too many things outside of Shameless, and he did Homecoming.
Yeah, and see, I'm not a Shameless guy. Never seen an episode, and I was aware he was on Homecoming. Still have never caught up with that show either. Yeah, so he was a total discovery for me.
I think it feels kind of like, you know, not to knock too hard. Oh, it's a podcast, whatever.
What you got to do, man.
They're like singular. He's got like one thing, but he does that one thing very, very well.
That's what I've heard. Is it's a very similar character to Lip from Shameless, but
it's almost like you can play it as an extension. You know, they're both set in Chicago, and like, you know, if Lip was a little more successful and like, I guess more straightforward, he probably would end up in the same spot with the same personality.
Right.
But I thought it worked really well for this story.
For me, the other absolute like highlight, who was a person I was already a fan of and didn't even know was going to be on the show. I've just been listening to her on podcasts for years, but Ayo Edebiri, who plays Sydney,
Yeah.
Is a fucking revelation. I thought she was just absolutely incredible. But everybody, Eben Moss-Bachrach, who plays Richie, incredible pathos to that character. The guy you from the get-go are like, I fucking hate this guy. And then like by the second or third episode, you're like, all right, I get it. I
still hate him, but I get it.
You're like, oh, this guy. Okay.
Yeah.
You texted me after episode 7, which is the unbroken single take. It's about right at 20 minutes long, ultra intense. One of the best episodes of TV I've seen all year. And I was gonna I don't think I texted you about it at the time. Or have you heard of Boiling Point? Came out last year.
It sounds familiar.
So Stephen Graham, who I'm sure you'd recognize from a billion things, he is the head chef at a high-end restaurant, and it's set in one evening of dinner service, and it is about an hour and a half, and it is a full unbroken take, the entire movie. And so very much so I was like, oh, okay, they definitely saw Boiling Point, but like this episode stands alone in its own measure. But I was like, if you haven't seen Boiling Point, imagine that episode and the level of just like truly white knuckling it, cranked up to 11. That's Boiling Point. Very, very tough movie, but another one that is equally just same thing with The Bear, dude. It's the tiny little details where I was just like, they definitely, like, every member of this writer's room worked in food service for a long time. And just there's
everybody is right and everybody's wrong simultaneously, and we're all expressing it as loud as we can.
Exactly, man. Dude, the moment with the cigarettes, and then like the tiny little moments of grace and just like kindness between people, where it's like a harder edge. I equated it to some of my coworkers this way because they're also fans of this other show I'm about to mention. But I would say about midway through, because I watched the show in the course of about 3 days, I was like, this is already hitting that like late period Parks and Rec vibe for me, where it's just like, I just care about all of these characters so much, and I just want good things to happen to them, and I want them to be happy. But whereas Parks is like, it's just nice people being nice, and that's what's like satisfying about it. This like has that hard edge of reality in it, so that when people do those little moments of like grace for each other, it just like pays off so much more. There's that moment where the I forget her character name, but the older female that's been working at the shop for a long time, and she's
Tina.
Yes, it's the episode where they go and they do the birthday for Oliver Platt's son. And so, yes, Tina she's tasked with making like a potato dish or whatever. And she's like getting frustrated by it. She clearly cares about it, but she's getting frustrated by it. And eventually she comes up to Sydney to like, go ahead, taste it. Tell me it tastes like shit. Like, go ahead. And she's like, that's great, chef. And just like her reaction in that moment of like, oh, it's good. Like I did a good thing. It's such a small moment, but I was like, dude, anybody that's ever worked in a restaurant where you're like, you've got 12 tickets in the window and you're like, oh my God, is this ever going to end? And like, you fucked up something. So like an order gets thrown back or whatever. And like the day is just going shit. And then somebody comes up from the body of the restaurant and is like, hey, I just want you to know that was the best sandwich I've ever had in my life, or like this or that. And then you're able to go tell the kitchen staff that. It's just like, those little moments are just that, again, that's what keeps you fucking doing it. The whole conversation about the fire, when he set the fire at his previous job, and it's just like that moment of like, if I let this happen, all of my fear, my anxiety, all of the shit I complain about day in, day out, it's all gone.
And that's such a universal message too.
And then you put the fire out. It was like, that is literally a metaphor for everything. Yes.
Oh man. Yeah. I knew I'd wanted to watch it just because Maddie Matheson. I don't know if you follow him and any other stuff, but he was a one of these like chefs that had such a big personality that he became a celebrity chef through like YouTube videos.
Yeah.
And apparently I saw that he was a producer on it. So I'm like,
and
okay,
he's like he's one of the creative consultants for all the cooking. Yeah.
100%. So I got his cookbook, and some of his dishes are really great. I don't recommend eating them all the time, but they're delicious. I would have watched an entire season that just started with like his last shot in the show where he's just looking at the video games going, you ever feel sad? like I don't know, he's just like such a big personality. That was fun. I wish they had done more with him, but I feel like they just did the exact amount that was necessary.
And to that point, we were talking about shows that like waste no time, and like this one just like shot out of the gate, and I feel like it's one of the very few like true word of mouth shows of this past year where it's like it dropped at a time where there was a billion other things out, but it's still just the quality of it, you couldn't not tell everybody you knew about it. But I love the moment they built to at the end where it was like, this could be the end of like a single season series that I would be like, that's kind of a masterpiece, but it also has such a compelling setup. And then it was only really kind of afterwards where I started to reflect on it a little bit, and I was like, dude, there is so much unmined territory for them to come back to. We didn't even I mean, there's the stuff with like the mobsters on the street and shit, but there was never like a customer conflict moment.
Nope.
That whole season. I'm like, that's such a huge part of the job. It's just the asshole customer or this or that. And I'm like, they didn't even dip their toes into that. And I just start thinking about like all the other things that I'm just like, dude, we haven't touched on that. We haven't touched on really like them being a family or like going out for a night, like, hey, we're all going out and getting wasted or whatever.
And
like we didn't have any of those.
Day.
We haven't had any of those moments. And I'm like, dude, I would watch these characters for quite a while. So,
and I think that's kind of the brilliant nature of it too. And like kind of focusing on just such a microscopic thing. I feel that's what made it good too, because it just allowed the writers like focus.
Yeah.
Because I'm 100% sure they're aware of all that great stuff they can do. But it's like, all right, but if we just like focus on this and keep everything there, we can really just make this really good. And then have, other stuff to do. Like, I thought that was strange too, that they didn't have like an angry customer story. But again, that's kind of what we were all expecting, right? Like,
exactly.
It's the stress. Like, I love that they focused on, there's enough stress running this restaurant already. And you as the viewer probably know that somebody got mad at him for something at some point.
Right.
But let's like see what's going on behind, the past where everything is happening.
Dude, that single take episode when they turn on the to-goes, like,
oh god, dude,
I have had nightmares like that.
Yeah,
because we at my restaurant, we have online ordering through our website. We also have Uber Eats and we have DoorDash. So we have 3 separate tablets that at any time could all be going off. And then I also will have a physical line of people in front of me. And there are times where you are just like,
I'm gonna discuss one of these.
What's happening? Yes. So I completely identified with the stress of that episode. Incredible show. Could not recommend it more highly. Again, that as it stands right now, that's definitely my number one. Barry's up there as well. We Own This City. Huge recommend as well on HBO.
Yep, I saw that. HBO is just my favorite streamer at this point.
I mean, in my personal opinion, FX is the only other network that even possibly holds a candle. And of course, like I said, they had The Bear, they had The Old Man this year. Always great stuff from them. But yeah, HBO still got the belt overall for sure.
Especially that last season of Barry, dude.
We could do. We could save that and do a whole season 3 recap if you wanted to. I've talked a bit about it with Gavin, but we will definitely. I tell you what, we'll definitely do at this point, since you've kind of been my TV buddy here. We haven't really done much TV on the feed this year. Because our approach was, oh my God, there's too much. We're not going to talk about any of it. We're going to talk about movies from 20 years ago, apparently. So, but we, of course, always do our year-end top 10 shows and everything. And so I feel like we definitely need to have a 3 or possibly 4-man Zoom session with you, Mayfield, whoever else is available. And because there was too much TV this year. And I feel like we would all have pretty varied list. So
100%. That's like some of my favorites would just be like old things from previous years.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And we would have a whole section of just nostalgic watches.
This didn't come out this year, but I did rewatch it this year and it still stands.
Yeah.
That's what most of it is.
Yeah. I mean, of course, in the midst of all of this television, I still somehow am like, yep. And I've watched 15 episodes of Friends in the background because it's on HBO Max, and that's what I throw on when I need to eat and not pay attention to anything.
100%.
So yeah. And of course, Gavin's got me watching ER episodes. I'll plug for that since we're wrapping up. But we just recently dropped episode 2 of our Summers in the ER series, which you can find if you want to go support us over at the patreon.com/thearkofE. But that's a series Gavin and I are doing. We go through old episodes of ER and pick out the guest stars and then talk about movies from those guest stars on our main feed for our 2x2 retro reviews for this summer. So check that out. We also dropped the latest 2x2, Action Jackson and 21 Bridges. We're breaking the 10-year rule because this is Gavin's special series. That's why we're talking about a movie that came out 3 years ago. And Action Jackson is from 1988, a Carl Weathers underappreciated action trash classic if you haven't seen it. So go check those out. That's available on this feed right here. Just scroll back up. Obviously, we'll have more episodes of Primal Pod and Cast coming soon. Any plugs for you, sir, that you'd like to get out there?
Well, now that you have your analytics, you can tell me how many people are in the Dayton, Ohio area.
I can definitely let you know. It needs probably about 30 days to process like territories and cities and all that.
100%.
But yeah, I will let you know.
Yeah. But if anybody does find yourself listening, we just got confirmed for Sound Valley Music Fest in August 27th. And then
awesome.
What is today? Yeah. Next Friday, we're playing the Woodward Theater, which is kind of a big deal for me just because the amount of people I've seen at the Woodward. I think the last show I went to was Lucy Dacus and Liza Ann, and that was awesome.
Nice.
Yeah, now I just get to be on that stage and hopefully make people not as sad as they made me. Yeah, it's a historic venue and it's in a really cool part of Cincinnati, so we're looking forward to that.
That's awesome. Yep, that's Mikey's band, Scary Hotel.
I should probably mention that as well.
I got you, dude.
Thanks, man. I don't plug a lot.
Dude, neither do I. I'm trying to get used to it now. For a while, I didn't even acknowledge that myself and nARK were the same person. I was like, oh, it's a different entity. I'm going to do really that whole thing.
Kept that up. That would have been
dude. Okay, so thing. I'll bring this up here because I don't know if it's ever been publicly restated elsewhere. But when I first started making stuff, Gavin and I literally recorded a 45-minute podcast that was a fake interview with me in character as nARK, as a different guy. Just a total prick, like very pretentious. And then I chickened out at the last second. I was like, dude, I don't want to keep this persona up for like the lifetime of however long I do this. Right. So yeah. But yeah, so it goes. Anyways, new album. It's called A Bridge, comes out August 12th. Just a little under a week and a half away, right? Yeah. So look forward to that. Let me know what you think of it. That's nARK, lowercase n, all caps ARK. And you can find me on all the usual services. Same thing with Scary Hotel. If you want to follow us, you can do that on Instagram. We are at the Ark of E Network. I don't know if you want to put out your personal one. It's up to you.
We do need more followers on the Scary Hotel Instagram.
And yes. And you are tagged in all of the Primal posts, so people know your personal one as well, whether you like it or not.
That's fine.
Yeah. Well, dude, thanks for doing this with me once again. We look forward to the further adventures of Spear and Fang, or do we call him Sword now?
I'm going to.
I don't know. Do we change? Do we change his name? He's letting the spear go. I'm so excited to see what he does with that sword, man. We'll find out next week, hopefully. So until next time, I've been Noah.
I'm Mikey.
And this has been Primal Pod and Cast. Thank you for listening.